The sound of a heavy brass paperweight sliding across a polished mahogany conference table is surprisingly loud. That was the exact noise Beatrice made while pushing the amended last will and testament directly toward my chest. It was 9:14 on a damp Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago. I am 34 years old. My name is Elias Thorne. I work as a Senior Quantitative Risk Actuary for a multinational private equity firm. My daily professional life revolves around identifying catastrophic structural liabilities in corporate mergers. I evaluate complex financial derivatives to protect billions of dollars in institutional capital. Beatrice is the third wife of my late father. She wore a black designer morning dress that cost exactly $4,250. She dabbed her perfectly dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. She smiled as the estate attorney read the fraudulent addendum aloud. The forged document explicitly stripped my legal right to the family estate. It transferred absolute control of an $8,400,000 trust entirely to her. I did not yell at the estate attorney. I did not accuse Beatrice of blatant criminal forgery in the middle of the boardroom. Emotional outbursts in legal settings are incredibly inefficient and permanently damaging to your credibility. Instead, I quietly analyzed the structural inconsistencies of the paper resting before me. The signature was dated on the 14th of last month. My father lost all fine motor control on the 9th due to his progressive neurological decay. The forgery was a remarkably sloppy statistical anomaly. Beatrice believed she was executing a flawless financial coup against a grieving son. She was actually presenting physical evidence of major wire fraud to an apex corporate auditor. Let me stop and ask you a highly specific question. Have you ever sat silently in a freezing room while a pathological liar attempts to steal your entire future? Where exactly were you sitting when you realized you had to destroy them? Tell me in the comments. I picked up the forged document and felt the premium linen paper. I memorized the notary seal and the specific blue ink profile. Beatrice patted my hand with her cold, manicured fingers. She told me she would allow me to keep my childhood bedroom furniture. I simply nodded and calculated the precise legal impact of her incoming catastrophic destruction. The legal trap was already forming in my mind. Let us review the exact actuarial history of Beatrice joining our family unit. She married my father exactly 7 years and 4 months ago. She was entirely unemployed and deeply accustomed to a high net worth lifestyle. My father was a retired neurosurgeon with a massive but highly illiquid real estate portfolio. He possessed precisely $8,400,000 in total assets. However, his actual monthly cash flow was strictly limited to conservative index fund dividends. Beatrice immediately viewed his wealth as an active checking account waiting to be drained. Her personal burn rate was a statistical anomaly I tracked on a hidden spreadsheet. Over the first 36 months, she spent $412,000. She purchased depreciating luxury vehicles and funded endless lavish vacations to coastal Europe. Whenever my father gently questioned the rapidly compounding credit card debt, the gaslighting began. She would cry hysterically and accuse him of financially abusing a devoted wife. She claimed she sacrificed her own non-existent career to manage his complicated social calendar. My father simply hated conflict and continuously authorized the transfer of protective capital. I did not intervene during this initial phase of aggressive wealth extraction. I am a quantitative risk actuary who respects the legal autonomy of consenting adults. However, the systemic failure escalated rapidly when my father developed a severe neurological condition. He required 24-hour palliative care at a cost of $14,000 monthly. Beatrice absolutely refused to liquidate any real estate to fund his necessary medical treatments. She claimed selling the secondary vacation home would severely damage her fragile emotional health. Therefore, I became the sole underwriter for my father in his final 2 years. I quietly paid exactly $336,000 out of my personal capital. I covered his specialized nursing staff and his imported synthetic pharmaceutical treatments. Beatrice assumed my silent financial intervention meant I was a soft and submissive target. She entirely misunderstood the fundamental nature of actuarial risk management. I was not paying for his care out of naive familial duty. I was mathematically securing my legal standing as the primary financial stakeholder in the estate. She believed her handwritten forgery would erase my established fiscal dominance. She was entirely delusional. Her entire reality was funded by my silent calculations. She drained the superficial cash, but I held the undeniable receipts for the structural foundation. Let us examine the specific legal architecture surrounding the massive real estate property portfolio. Beatrice fundamentally misunderstood the difference between a simple will and a corporate holding entity. She believed a forged piece of paper could instantly transfer physical property title deeds. She did not know I restructured the entire estate exactly 4 years ago. I established a series of nested limited liability companies under a primary irrevocable trust. I am the sole administrative director of this centralized master corporate entity. I utilized advanced proprietary risk modeling software to completely shield the physical assets. My unseen labor extended beyond paying those massive monthly medical bills. I managed the encrypted digital vault containing all original biometric property deeds. I paid the annual corporate registration fees of $2,800. I filed the complex localized tax returns for 7 different residential income properties. Beatrice took this invisible financial infrastructure entirely for granted. She assumed the rental income simply flowed into her checking account like magic. She spent her days attending expensive charity luncheons and completely ignoring the actual administration. My professional life revolves around identifying and containing catastrophic systemic corporate vulnerabilities. You never leave $8 million exposed to an erratic and entitled secondary beneficiary. I also controlled the localized network security for the primary estate residents. I installed a persistent enterprise-level surveillance system to monitor 24-hour nursing staff. I routed the high-definition video feeds directly to my secure offshore server. I paid the dedicated fiber internet bill of $195 monthly. Beatrice thought the discrete dome cameras were completely deactivated after complaining about privacy. I simply turned off the physical indicator lights on the camera chassis. She lacked the intellectual capacity to understand basic local area network routing configuration. She forged a binding legal document in a room wired for continuous audio recording. I stood up from the polished mahogany conference table. I placed the fraudulent copy of the will inside my locked leather briefcase. Beatrice offered me a deeply patronizing smile as I buttoned my wool suit jacket. She truly believed she had just outsmarted a senior quantitative risk actuary. She had no idea her financial access was built entirely on my continuous authorization. I walked out of the corporate legal office without saying another single word. I was already calculating the precise timeline of her incoming total corporate asset liquidation. I returned to my corporate office suite at precisely 11:14 in the morning. I did not pace the expensive carpet or smash a porcelain coffee cup in a fit of wild anger. I placed my heavy leather briefcase on my standing desk and authenticated my secure terminal. My dual-curved monitors instantly illuminated a highly restricted proprietary institutional banking interface. I entered my complex 32-character master encryption key to access the irrevocable trust. The breaking point had officially passed into the cold execution phase of absolute asset recovery. Beatrice required an immediate and entirely catastrophic financial grounding to understand her new reality. I opened the primary limited liability company dashboard governing my father's main residential estate. She relied entirely on a scheduled monthly dividend transfer of $22,000. I located the automated routing number embedded deep in the primary corporate checking account. I executed a hard administrative stop on all of her outgoing beneficiary cash disbursements. The banking system instantly flagged her upcoming transfer as a critical unauthorized liquidity drain. She would not receive a single penny of my father's actual generational corporate wealth. Next, I turned my focused attention to her immediate physical and domestic digital infrastructure. I accessed the centralized property management software for the 7 lucrative residential income units. Beatrice was currently listed as a secondary administrative observer on the main rental dashboard. I permanently revoked her digital credentials using my primary executive architectural override protocol. The aggregated tenant rent payments of $41,000 now routed directly to me. I completely isolated the massive operational cash flow from her vulnerable personal banking ecosystem. My quiet severance then shifted directly to her extravagant daily operational luxury lifestyle. I logged into my personal wealth management portal to review our joint outstanding liabilities. I located the active auto pay directive for her premium imported luxury SUV lease. The recurring monthly payment was exactly $2,450.10. I deliberately cancelled the digital transaction and removed my legal guarantor status. I then completely revoked her authorized user profile on my Platinum corporate credit card. This was the exact financial instrument she used to fund her expensive daily spa treatments. Finally, I initiated a localized network blackout at the sprawling primary residential family estate. I accessed the centralized gigabit fiber router through my highly encrypted offshore digital tunnel. I disabled the primary wireless broadcasting bands and severely restricted the local area network. I kept a single hidden subnet active solely for my continuous high-definition surveillance feeds. Her expensive streaming televisions and automated smart home climate controls instantly went entirely dark. I watched the confirmation data packets verify the total administrative isolation on my second monitor. Every single financial tether connecting her to my resources was now officially and permanently severed. I locked my workstation terminal and drank a cold glass of perfectly filtered mineral water. Let her wake up to a world where her stolen leverage no longer exists. The automated alert system on my mobile device triggered at exactly 8:14 on Wednesday morning. Beatrice attempted to purchase an $8 iced latte using my corporate Platinum card. The proprietary banking algorithm instantly declined the transaction due to the revoked authorization status. She immediately swiped the physical plastic card 3 more times in rapid succession. This triggered a localized fraud lock at the point of sale terminal. My secondary dashboard updated to reflect a sudden catastrophic spike in her heart rate. I could monitor this biometric data because her smartwatch was still tethered to my cellular plan. She called my direct line exactly 4 minutes later from her leased luxury vehicle. Her voice was trembling with a manufactured frequency of deep maternal distress. "Elias, there is a terrible glitch with the joint banking accounts," she said softly. "I need you to call the wealth manager and fix this embarrassing technical error immediately." I did not inform her that the joint banking accounts no longer legally existed. I remained entirely silent and let the dead air stretch across the digital cellular connection. Silence is a highly effective interrogation technique used to force an opponent into unforced errors. When the soft manipulation completely failed to produce a result, Beatrice pivoted instantly to aggressive extortion. "Listen to me very carefully, you ungrateful little corporate drone," she hissed into the microphone. "I have a signed will from your father leaving me absolute control of the entire estate. If you do not turn my credit cards back on, I will permanently evict you." She threatened to liquidate my childhood home and sell the property to a commercial developer. She claimed she would leave me with absolutely nothing but the clothes on my back. This was a completely hollow and uncalculated verbal threat based on pure financial ignorance. Beatrice did not possess the legal authority to evict a tenant from a corporate trust. I routed the digital audio recording of her explicit extortion directly to my secure offshore server. The file size was precisely 4.2 megabytes of unstructured vocal panic. By noon, the systemic collapse of her daily routine accelerated into a severe operational disaster. Her high-definition streaming devices failed to connect because the home internet was completely dead. She sent me 42 separate text messages filled with escalating threats of legal violence. She falsely promised to call my direct corporate supervisor and claim I was stealing her rightful inheritance. She believed her aggressive volume would intimidate me into restoring her luxurious financial supply line. I simply archived every single threat into a highly organized cryptographic ledger. The escalation phase was proceeding exactly according to my strict algorithmic behavioral risk models. Her blind desperation made her entirely predictable and remarkably easy to digitally manipulate. She was perfectly primed for the administrative trap I was actively building in the shadows. I slowly drank my hot loose leaf black tea. I waited very patiently for her next move. Building an inescapable legal trap requires immense patience, cold precision, and impeccable digital documentation. I utilized my advanced risk modeling software to compile 3 years of her financial data. I extracted every single bank transfer from my father to her personal accounts. The precise accumulated total was exactly $412,890. I formatted this data into a standardized ledger using strict double-entry bookkeeping principles. Next, I needed her to legally verify her fraudulent intent in a permanent digital format. I drafted a formal transfer of estate liability disguised as a mandatory probate authorization. The header of the encrypted email appeared to originate from a neutral third-party mediator. The subject warned of an imminent total asset freeze, requiring immediate formal beneficiary validation. Beatrice received the targeted phishing email at exactly 2:14 in the afternoon. She was sitting furiously in the leather driver seat of her immobilized luxury vehicle. She opened the secure document on her mobile device and bypassed the secondary authentication warnings. The digital document explicitly required her to upload a scanned copy of the amended will. It stated that the signee acknowledged full legal responsibility for the submitted testamentary claims. She simply saw a shiny digital button labeled with the words Immediate Asset Release Command. She eagerly uploaded the forged PDF file and typed her full legal name as the beneficiary. She pressed Submit and permanently destroyed her plausible deniability in a federal court of law. Transmitting a forged legal document across state lines constitutes a textbook definition of wire fraud. My secondary objective was gathering the physical evidence of the actual criminal forgery itself. I accessed the hidden dome camera network installed in my father's primary residential study. I isolated the exact high-definition video file from the 14th of last month. The digital timestamp was precisely 9:42 in the dark and quiet evening. I watched Beatrice sit at the heavy oak desk with a bright blue fountain pen. I recorded her practicing my father's signature exactly 17 times on a yellow legal pad. She then carefully signed the fraudulent addendum while my father slept in the adjacent room. Every keystroke she made and every frame of video was captured by my secure server. I hashed this undeniable proof on the blockchain to ensure the evidence remained perfectly pristine. This cryptographic hashing ensures the gathered evidence cannot be altered or dismissed as a fabrication. The administrative trap was completely sealed by 4:30 in the late afternoon. She willingly provided the exact paper trail necessary to initiate a total systemic legal destruction. I packaged the entire dossier into a single encrypted zip file for my corporate lawyers. I was fully prepared for her entirely inevitable attempt at a physical confrontation tomorrow morning. My pulse remained at a steady resting rate of exactly 62 beats per minute. I drank a fresh cup of hot loose leaf black tea and waited patiently for the winter sun to slowly set. My perimeter alert triggered at exactly 11:15 on Thursday morning. The digital concierge desk in my corporate lobby scanned an unauthorized visitor. It was Beatrice attempting a surprise physical interception at my private equity firm. She bypassed my digital blocks by simply driving her leased vehicle directly downtown. I took the glass elevator down to the ground floor atrium. The lobby is a sprawling marble expanse filled with elite financial executives. Beatrice wore a tailored charcoal blazer to project absolute maternal authority and refined grief. She clearly believed dressing like a wealthy professional would intimidate me into immediate submission. Her face immediately contorted into a mask of extreme and entirely fabricated affection. She rushed forward and attempted to embrace me with a dramatic sigh. I took exactly one step backward to maintain a sterile physical distance. "Elias, my sweet boy," she said loud enough for my passing colleagues to hear. "I am so incredibly worried about your recent erratic behavior regarding the estate." This was the false truce phase of her standard psychological manipulation cycle. When brute force fails, she pivots instantly to portraying herself as a deeply concerned victim. She smiled thinly and clutched her expensive black leather handbag. "I just want to talk things out over a nice, quiet lunch," she purred softly. "Let us go to the bistro across the street and reset our relationship." She used the word relationship because she thought it sounded suitably comforting and collaborative. She wanted to corner me in a public dining room to force my compliance. She assumed I would deeply fear creating a scene in front of my peers. She completely misunderstood the fundamental nature of my cold analytical processing. I do not fear public judgment because I do not value public opinion. I calmly looked at the biometric access logs on my encrypted company tablet. "I have exactly 45 minutes allocated for my mandated afternoon nutrition interval," I stated. Beatrice beamed with predatory triumph, assuming her emotional ambush was entirely successful. "Wonderful," she chirped, linking her arm aggressively through my rigid elbow. We can discuss turning the house internet back on and releasing my scheduled trust dividends. I did not correct her wildly inaccurate assessment of the current systemic reality. We walked across the busy intersection to the premium downtown bistro. She immediately ordered sparkling water and a completely unnecessary imported caviar appetizer. The appetizer alone cost exactly $185 before the automatic gratuity. She assumed I was paying for this expensive meal with my corporate expense account. She believed the false truce was her masterstroke of interpersonal family diplomacy. She was actually walking blindly into a meticulously designed public execution of her leverage. I sat at the mahogany table and placed my locked briefcase near my feet. I waited patiently for her inevitable pivot from fake sweetness back to demanding extortion. I simply folded my hands and breathed very slowly. The restaurant ambient temperature was exactly 68 degrees of perfect comfort. The waiter placed a chilled silver platter of caviar on our table. He poured fresh lemon over the tiny pearl spoons. Beatrice immediately dropped her grieving widow facade the second he walked away. The false truce lasted exactly 8 minutes before her natural hostility completely returned. "All right, Elias," Beatrice sneered. "Turn my direct deposit on right now. I missed my morning spa appointment because of your little digital tantrum." I did not eat the expensive appetizer. I placed my black briefcase on the mahogany table. I entered the biometric code and opened the rigid metal lid. I extracted a heavy manila folder and a customized digital tablet. Have you ever watched a pathological liar realize their false reality is entirely dead? What exact expression did they make when the leverage vanished completely? Tell me your story in the comments right now. I pushed the heavy folder directly into her chest. "This is a formal cease and desist order drafted by my corporate legal counsel," I stated calmly. "My firm retains a $2.5 million legal team for asset protection. You uploaded a forged legal document across state lines using my network. That digital signature legally verified your attempt to commit federal wire fraud." Beatrice dropped her tiny pearl spoon. It clattered loudly against the fine porcelain plate. Her face transitioned rapidly from arrogant entitlement to absolute systemic shock. "You cannot steal my inheritance," she whispered frantically. "I am neutralizing a catastrophic liability threatening my corporate trust," I corrected her. "You are simply losing access to a vault you never owned. I also possess the high-definition security footage of your late-night forgery. The time stamp is precisely 9:42 on the 14th of last month. You practiced my father's signature exactly 17 times on a yellow legal pad." I slid the digital tablet across the smooth table toward her shaking hands. The crystal-clear video looped continuously on the brightly illuminated screen. "I have completely severed your access to the primary estate holding company," I told her. "I cancelled your vehicle lease and revoked your credit status. I submitted your extortion text messages to the federal authorities. If you attempt to access the properties again, you will be arrested." Beatrice stared at the undeniable physical evidence of her felony crimes. Her lower lip began to tremble violently as she looked around the crowded room. The surrounding elite financial executives were staring silently at our table. "You are a monster," she hissed quietly while her perfectly manicured hands shook. "I am an actuary mathematically correcting a severe structural deficit," I replied. "Your return on investment is officially zero. My financial infrastructure is now a closed ecosystem." I stood up slowly and buttoned my wool suit jacket. I placed exactly $30 crisp on the table for my sparkling water. I picked up my briefcase and walked toward the heavy glass exit doors. I did not look back to watch her panic over the massive unpaid caviar bill. By Monday morning, the systemic collapse of Beatrice's artificial reality was entirely complete. I monitored the cascading failures from my secure office terminal. Her leased luxury vehicle was formally repossessed by the dealership recovery team at dawn. The rapid cancellation of my guarantor status triggered an immediate derogatory mark on her credit. Her personal credit rating dropped exactly 82 points in just 48 hours. It settled firmly at an abysmal score of 514. This specific algorithmic drop triggered a cascading default on her remaining unsecured boutique charge cards. Her entirely fabricated high society lifestyle evaporated the moment her cards declined at the country club. Beatrice faced a much more severe and legally binding structural failure regarding her housing. I executed a formal 48-hour eviction notice through the primary limited liability company. Because I controlled the underlying corporate trust, she possessed zero tenant rights to the physical estate. She owed exactly $9,400 in accumulated legal fees to her bewildered attorney. Without my premium credit line, she could not even hire a basic domestic moving service. She attempted to secure an emergency short-term rental using her cellular network connection. However, premium residential landlords require automated income verification to underwrite a complex lease agreement. I had permanently severed her access to the massive operational cash flow of the rental units. She was completely isolated in a rapidly emptying physical housing asset she could no longer afford. She spent the entire weekend attempting to breach my secure corporate digital perimeter. My server logs recorded exactly 312 failed digital authentication attempts on the trust portal. She tried to guess the biometric bypass passwords for the centralized property management software. She failed miserably every single time she tried to log in. A trust system designed by an elite quantitative risk actuary cannot be compromised easily. I did not feel any profound sense of joy or vindictive triumph. Those are messy biological responses meant for people who lack procedural financial discipline. I calmly observed the pristine beauty of contractual symmetry, resolving a massive deficit. She extracted my father's resources for years under the false premise of marital devotion. I corrected the systemic imbalance by removing her foundational financial infrastructure. The consequences she suffered were entirely guaranteed and absolute strict mathematical certainties. I closed the remote diagnostic window and initiated a permanent data wipe. I sit in my quiet penthouse apartment overlooking the freezing Chicago River. The ambient climate control is set precisely to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. My secondary workstation processes encrypted actuarial models at 4.2 GHz. There are no hysterical phone calls or manufactured emergencies interrupting my deep work. Peace is not a magical feeling you stumble upon by accident. Peace is a highly engineered environment constructed through ruthless boundary enforcement. You must carefully calculate the exact operational cost of your own mental bandwidth. You must excise any toxic variables from your personal network topology. Let me ask you one final question before I log off completely. What exact boundary will you enforce today to finally protect your own peace? Tell me your detailed action plan down in the comments below right now. Beatrice is currently experiencing the harsh mathematical reality of independent survival. She must navigate a world that no longer subsidizes her weaponized financial incompetence. I officially transferred the fully recovered $8,400,000 into a heavily diversified index fund. The projected annual yield is exactly $420,000 in reliable passive revenue. I do not check her social media profiles or wonder where she sleeps. A senior quantitative risk actuary only looks backward to extract highly actionable data. My historical estate data is securely encrypted and permanently archived on an offshore server. I am completely focused on the forward trajectory of my lucrative private equity career. The silence in my apartment is no longer a deafening and hollow void. It is a perfectly optimized baseline. I close my secure terminal and drink a cold glass of filtered mineral water. The biological variables are completely neutralized. The structural liabilities are fully resolved. The entire financial system is clean.